years ago, I wrote a paper about the destiny approach and how we can relate it with macrobiotics. And in the next following hour, I'm going to present that to you. And so what's the benefits of this philosophical approach? I think first of all, we become more peaceful with life, and then also less stressed. When we have this destiny approach, we can see easier the life from a bigger picture with less judgmental, but also it's more easy to connect with other people and mostly with nature. So in this philosophy approach, destiny approach, as you're going to see, it's very much about how nature sometimes or all the time can grab our hands and take us with her. It's like the painters and the composers and the writers when they say they wrote something like piece of art, and they say it wasn't them, it was something that they felt was guiding them. So this is more or less what we're going to be talking about. Okay, so now I'm going to share my screen. Feel if you want to unmute yourself and make questions, go ahead. For me, it's okay. Let's see if I can. Simon, please. No, because it's Simon's. Okay.
And Simon.
I'm just trying to. So we're here. Okay. So in the next hours, we're going to talk about how science sees this destiny approach, because there are already lots of studies regarding how we make decisions in our life. And then we're going to look at Oriental philosophy and how can we relate destiny with the more philosophical and Oriental philosophies, and namely Aishing, which one was presenting before. And then in the philosophy, and for instance, what the Greeks mention about it, and then what are the implications? So if we believe in it, what can that give us and bring to us in our lives? And finally, how to connect with it. So first of all, what is destiny? So I must warn you, my native language, I am Portuguese, so sometimes I might use some words that for you it might have a different meaning, I don't know, so I'm going to do my best. So I decided to put here the definition of destiny from the Oxford Dictionary. So what they say is that the destiny is something that will necessarily happen to a person or thing in the future. But they also say that it's the hidden power believed to control future events, like a god or something like that, or nature, who knows? So as I was saying, we are going to start with the scientific approach and studies that are already happening and what they found out, although this is very recent. So in the 1770s, there was this man, Benjamin Libet. He started to make experiences to the brain of people. So he was putting those electric cables, you know, and then he was talking with the people. And what he found out was something very interesting, and other people already did the same experiments, and the results are very similar. So what he found out was that when we're thinking that we're making a decision, our brain, the activity of the brain started much before. So Andy said it was like more or less 10 seconds between the time that the brain is more active and the time that we realize we had the final decision. So what does this might mean? This might mean that is the subconscious mind that might make the decision, but then it comes to the conscious mind. And then it's the conscious mind that tries to explain why we had that decision and not other. And it's really funny because sometimes Simon in his classes, he gives this example that when someone goes to a cafe, you know, we go to a group with a group of friends to a cafe, we know everything we want to get in a cafe, we want it to be clean, to have kind of macrobiotic food, mood, with people that don't look aggressive. And then we enter in a cafe and it seems to have all of those characteristics, but somehow we feel, I don't feel comfortable here. I don't know why, but I don't feel comfortable here. And so we leave. So this is our subconscious or unconscious mind that is reading other things that maybe consciously we don't know. So this is very interesting. It was very interesting for me to read about nature, about science, and what they think about it. And it's really interesting also because nowadays there even a discipline in science just to try to explain or study the free will. It's the neuroscience of the free will, as they call it. So at this point, it's very interesting. So I'm going to ask you to make an experiment with me, okay? So I'm going to ask you to choose in your mind a country, okay? If you had to choose a country, you can even write it. So do you know which country would you choose? Okay, so this is very interesting because most of the people, when we make this game, we only get 3, 4, maximum 5 countries in our mind. So in that sense, it's already the subconscious giving us the information. We are already limited in a way, in a good way, in what are the possibilities we can choose. So I'm sure we all know lots of other countries, but our mind only gave us those 4, maximum 5. And then in those ones, we will choose one. You see, so even we know lots of countries, we already are limited by something back here that is already giving us. And so this is very interesting, and it's related with a sentence that was mentioned by a poet many years ago, and was afterwards later used by an American politician. And what the poet said was that we have the known knowns, and then we have the known unknowns, and then we have the unknown unknowns. So what does this mean? It means that we know what we know. I know I love carrots, for instance. And then we know what we don't know. I know that I'm not particularly fan of broccoli. I'm not. But then I don't know what I don't know, you see. So for instance, I know that I don't know much of geography, right? I know that I don't know much of Brazil or Israel, you know, but the things we don't know, it's completely out of our range. And the unknowns are much bigger than the things that we know and the things that we know that we don't know, you see? So this was the politician, the American politician was Donald Rumsfeld. So in this way, we are already limited. But then we have also another thing that also limits us, which is our language. So for instance, if I had to explain what I feel about someone I love, I could say that I don't have words, you know, I don't have words to explain that. And so words also, in a way, they limit us, right? It's also our culture limits us, but it's okay. It's part of who we are. And then I think there's also another thing, which is we think that our culture defines us in terms of the way we decide, right? But regarding also another study that was made, what they found out was that our memory is always changing. So even when we are remembering something in the past, what is actually happening is that we are creating a memory of that memory. You know what I mean? So we have the real event, And then a year later, we remember, oh, Simon, remember when we went to that hotel? And we are at a little bit distance. And in 2 years, we are going to remember. And because what happens with our brain is that when he has an opening, he starts creating the story itself. So even our memories, they're not what truly happened, and that's also a conditioning, and it's okay. But this just to say that we think that we decide also regarding our cultural um, environment, but no one knows how does the brain works in order to change the memories. So in that way, we're also kind of limited. Okay. And so then another very interesting thing is that we kind of like to think ourselves as intelligent people, right? And then we have animals that are more instinct. So we are intelligent and intuitive, but then animals are instinct. But what also lots of information already we already know from also studies is that animals, for instance, trees, they talk with each other through roots, they protect each other. For instance, I don't know if you read the book of The Secret Life of the Trees. It's very interesting because it's like if a giraffe comes to bite that tree, she starts warning all the others. And it's so beautiful because then they start spreading this smell the giraffes don't like, and because the giraffes already know that those trees are going to warn all the others, the giraffe will move like 100 meters away, hoping that that smell doesn't go to the other trees. You see, so this to say that we often think that animals are not intelligent, but they are. And the thing for me was the most interesting is that now scientists discovered that, for instance, bees, then they can count, they can subtract, they can make also counts. It's really beautiful. And even in the case of the trees, they even collaborate with some fungus to protect them, and even with some other animals. So again, just to give the idea that maybe we're not as a part of nature as sometimes we think we are, right? And also because again, other studies shows that the way we try to get food, or the way we try to get a mate, or the way we make friends and allies, it's very similar to the way animals act. It's the way we do it, it's very similar to other animals. So maybe we're not that intelligent, maybe we just don't know that it's nature acting through us. And so in this part, I like to give the example, for instance, of imagine a tree. When a tree starts giving the flowers, right, and gives the fruits, I wonder if the tree thinks, okay, now I'm going to decide, and it's me who's going to decide that I'm going to flourish and have all the fruits. Or if the tree just go with the flow and with nature, you see. You know what I mean? Because maybe when we think, okay, now I'm going to procreate, or now I'm going on holiday, maybe it's just nature flowing through us and we're just rationalizing. And so, for instance, in animals, we say that, okay, that they go with the seasons, right? The bears hibernate, and some birds go to other countries, and on and on. And so that's instinct. But when it comes to us, we have also other situations, like, for instance, menstruation and menopause in women, or andropause. We cannot explain that. And neither, or at least for me, I cannot explain, for instance, the people I fall in love with, right? It just happens. So I think maybe we're much more nature than what we think we are. And it's very funny because some of these ideas Oshawa kind of touched them, you know. And so he said that he was on and on sometimes with the idea of knowledge, the instincts and intuition. And so one of the things he said is that instinct and intuition are the same thing. That was one of the things. And another one that I put it here was that knowledge does not exist without instinct. And more ahead, then we're going to see that he also mentioned that knowledge is what puts us away from what is bigger. It's knowledge. When we are creating knowledge, we are in the mind. When we are in the instinct and intuition, we are in the nature, which is much bigger than us. Okay, so, and it's here. Words or speech develop in parallel with human knowledge and inversely with our consciousness. So this was Oshawa also saying it.
I don't understand that last one.
Okay, so what he says, so what he says is that knowledge is what we think we know, right? And we express that through words and through speech and through writing. But a different thing is the consciousness, and the consciousness sometimes doesn't even has a way to express it in words. So what he says is the word or speech, the more knowledgeable we are, the more words and speech we have, but that is inverse of consciousness. What do you think? Inverse is like almost like an opposite.
Right.
It was him who wrote it.
I can see inverse of subconscious. I'll think about it, or I won't think about it.
Okay, so I love philosophy. People who know me, I've always loved philosophy. Although I'm from arts, I love philosophy. I think they complement very well. So when I was writing this, I was sharing this with my friends, with lots of friends. But I have this small group of friends since I was a teenager. And so these girls, they're not into macrobiotics at all. So I was trying to explain this to them to see how they would react. And it was very funny because some of them really got upset, really upset, because of this sense of agency. So what is this sense of agency? This is the sense of control, because we all want to feel we have some control in our lives. And if there is such thing as a destiny, what we might be saying is that we have no control. It's something that we just go with. And sometimes it's even bad to think like this, because some people really grow up in very bad conditions. So what about the sense of agency and control? So what I have to think, what I think about this is that, imagine when the example I gave before, the people with whom we fall in love and get married, I think for people it's much easier for them to see this as a destiny. You know, oh no, it wasn't my decision. Even the other day I was having a lunch with a friend, and she got married, and she said, we're very different from each other, but we broke up once, but it was like someone was taking out my heart. I cannot live without him. It's something above. So when it's these kinds of stuff like love, or a big job we get, or this big luck we have, you know, it's much easier to accept this idea of something beyond our control and destiny. But the question I make to you is, and it's very funny being talking with the macrobiotic group, do you think there is a difference between what is a big and what is a small decision? What do you think? So what I think is that there are no much big difference of a big and a small decision. So I'm going to give you another example. The first time I presented this, it was very interesting because before that presentation, I was talking with a friend, and she was telling me that she's in macrobiotics. She's practicing macrobiotics for a long time. And when she got pregnant, the first thing she thought was that she wanted a natural birth, because she born as cesarean, it's how you say? Yes. And so she thought, no, I'm going to have my daughter as a natural birth. That's what I want for myself. And it was very interesting, because she said that before that, when she was a child, a nun, a aunt that she had, told her that when she was having, her mother was having her, she had to decide if she wanted to make cesarean or if she wanted to make a natural birth. And her mother wasn't in macrobiotics, and what she said to the doctor was, I'm going to make a cesarean. And it was the best thing, because if she didn't make the cesarean, when she born, her you know what I mean,
the umbilical cord was
yes,
wrapped
it was
around.
really, exactly. And so probably if her mother would have gone through the natural birth, she might have died. So she said that she heard this as she was a very, very young child, and she never remembered that again. So when did she remember that? She remembered when she was having her girl, her daughter, and she got the same question from the doctor. So she had to decide. And she said, in that moment, that story came to me. In years and years and years, I never remember that, but in that moment, that information was there, and so she decided to have a cesarean, you see. So this is very interesting, because for me, when she told me that, it was for me, but I'm a romantic also, I kind of felt it was kind of nature trying to communicate with her so that they could both live in a way, right? So this to say that such small thing as a small conversation she had with an aunt when she was a very small child, it really was very important later in life to make a big decision. So for me, there's not such big thing as big and small decisions. Of course, when we have a big decision, we are most of the time so in a wow moment, it's easier to feel like it's not up to us. You know what I mean? And I mean, this is just an approach, and maybe we have these moments of destiny sometimes in some moments in life, and some other times we have more the sense of control and we actually have the control of our life. I don't know, this is just an approach. So, and another thing I think it's fun is this idea that the devil is in the little details. This is a German saying, but I also heard from a German person that they used to say before, the God is in the details. So this to say that maybe small and big, maybe there's not much of a difference in it. Okay.
They say God
So,
is in the pots and pans.
exactly. Is it so? It's very beautiful, I think. Okay, so just to finalize this point, and then we're going to pass to the other one. I'd like to give you this quote from Henry Walter, where he said that freedom of will is an illusion, if we mean by it that under identical conditions, we would be able to do or decide in a different way, while simultaneously acting only for reasons and being the true originators of our actions. So what does he mean with this? The idea here is, imagine if we would go back a year in our life and we didn't know anything of what happened in this last year. What he's trying to ask you is, what do you think you would do in your life? Would you repeat all the same situations you chose? Or you think you would choose differently? So that's the idea of the free will. And or not, we don't know. So let's go to the Oriental philosophy and macrobiotics. So the first thing we can think about, it's the trigrams, right? And the Saiken, sometimes I change, it's Saiken, right? Sankai. Oh, okay, I got it wrong again. I always get this wrong. It's Sankai, okay, which is the 3 powers approach. It's the same thing as the trigrams. So what the way we look at the trigram is that the top part is the Tian, which is the way of heaven, what is above. And so in here we can say is those things that affects human in a way, and then comes from above. So it's, for instance, the weather conditions. And for instance, we know that when it's more rainy, we tend to be more sad and down. When it's more sunny, we tend to be more happy, for instance. Or the lunar cycles also, the astrological conditions, and on and on. So this is the seasons also. So this is the top line in the trigram, and it's the power of the heavens in a human being. So then we have also the Ren, the way of the humans, and it's what's in the middle. So it's that real line in the middle. And in here, what do we have? In here we have everything that's related with the emotions on a human being. What is cultural? What did we learn from our friends and family? And very interesting, Oshawa mentioned the righteousness. It's here. And he called this line the humanity. And also we are also conditioned by this one. And finally, the last one is the D, the way of hurt, what is belong, and the source of all that is living. And so here it's also a very macrobiotic approach, because we often think that the food affects our thinking. So where does the food comes from the bottom of the line. So again, the way the hurt affects us, but not just the food. Imagine if we grow up in the mountains, even our body and the way we see the world will be different compared with a place where it's completely flat. Right? Imagine people that grow up in a flat areas, usually they tend to be more tall and with big legs compared with people that grow up in more mountains, more short and legs stronger but smaller. Okay, so this is the idea that so if we have free will, where would we put the free will in these three lines? What do you think? I would say in the middle, because the top is what comes from the heavens, the down is what comes from the earth. Here is the humanity. Okay, so if we have free will, it will be here, but whether we want it or not, we are always conditioned by the heaven, the earth, and even the place where we grow up. So imagine if I grow up in a Catholic community, I will think differently compared if I grow up in a community where people don't believe in any kind of religion. Okay, so and then also the Aishing, it's very interesting because João was talking about the Aishing, but also Aishing touch a little bit on this point of the destiny. And so what we can find in the Aishing is that although any point of reference is possible, when our consciousness awakes, it is already in systems of relationship so powerful that they tend to prevail, you see? And so for me, it's this part is very interesting. Sometimes I like the Aishing. I think it's a very interesting idea for us to use, for instance, to leave us away from our own conditioning, because it gives us other possibilities, but more as a playful ground. But this is a little bit like a destiny approach too. And so now let's pass to nature as a conditioner, okay? This is the third part. Any questions so far? No? Okay. So I think we often think that we're conditioned, and no one likes to be conditioned, right? But the thing is, in economics, we usually say that when we make a decision, we are already losing something else. For instance, I came with Simon on holidays. We decided to come to this hotel, so we're losing the chance of going to a different place. You see, so the moment we choose, we are conditioning ourselves. Of course, people don't like the idea of conditioning because usually we're related with something negative, right? But it doesn't have to be like that. Imagine we are in a really nice hotel with very nice food, very relaxed. I don't feel myself conditioned. I am, but in a positive way. You know what I mean? So we only don't like when the things don't play out the way we expect them to play out. And so it's not necessarily a bad thing because it's actually our conditioning that gives us the basis, you know, the structure for our life. We need that not to lose ourselves in a way. So um, oh, this was what I was saying before about the bees and the birds and also the trees. They can communicate and they can show very smart ideas and approach. But I think what often happens to us is that we measure other animals and nature according to our own parameters, right? And that's not really fair because if they act in a different way, we don't understand because we have specific parameters that they're being intelligent in their own way. It's like trying to measure, I don't know, it's like trying to give two cups. I like this image, two cups, a cup to a human and a cup to a bird with a big beak, you know? It's different the way they're going to approach the same problem. Of course, they are different. So it's not really nice to compare ourselves to others and imagine ourselves as being much more intelligent because that's not really, it doesn't have to be totally true. Okay, and so these are all quotes from Oshawa. And what he said is that instinct, intuition substitutes the free will of the scientists. He also said that only instinct and intuition is free. And in the end, he said also that our center, which thinks, remembers, understands, and rules, is the infinite itself and nothing else. So he played with this idea of the small self and the big self. I don't know if you read about this. If you don't, it's really interesting because he said that the small self is based on the ego more and what we do in life, and the big self is related more with the openness and with the consciousness. And he said that without understanding these two, we will never have free will. If he's right or not, I don't know. You'll tell me later. Okay. Can you just tell me what time it is? 16:35. Okay, so let's go to the destiny and the philosophy. So in philosophy, there was, I don't know if you heard about the Stoics. I really like them. They were Greeks, but this became so popular in Greece, then the Romans start getting their ideas from the Stoics. And the Stoics, they were the fathers and mothers of the positive thinking. So it's really interesting. So what they were saying, the Stoics, is that there is a God, but God is nature. And so they had this saying, really interesting. They said that we have a destiny, whether we want it or not. And so they said that if we accept our destiny, we go very happily through our life. If we don't accept our destiny, you will drag us, you see, through the destiny. So they were very much into living the moment, to try to accept the moment that they were living, trying to be more positive, trying to be very into nature, respect nature a lot. And so these were the codes. So for instance, they said, if you really want to escape the things that harass you, what you're needing is not to be in a different place, but to be a different person. See, this is very much now what we call the positive thinking. And then they also said that men should understand nature and integrate in it, because for them it was like as humans were the expression of nature. And so whether we understood that or not, nature was going into its process through us. So it's like, I don't know if you read the book, the history of the world in 100 pages. It's something like this. It's a big book, but they try to explain everything, but in a short way. And I read this book many, many years ago. I wasn't even practicing macrobiotics at that time. But for me, it was really interesting to kind of understand that it's like, at least it was what I read from it. Maybe you took different ideas from that book, but for me, it was like, it's like there's this invention that wants to appear, and the invention starts trying to go into different minds, and it's like the person that is more open will get the invention, and then we'll get the name in the history. This because big inventions, usually they happen in different parts of the world at the same time. So it's really interesting to see. So for me, if there is such thing of a destiny, I like to imagine it as imagine nature as a plan. He wants to do it, and the people that are more kind of open. I don't want to be positive or negative because we all have our moments, but it's like, okay, this person might be the right person to do what I want, and so we are the the expression of nature, but we are only the people that do what nature wants. And this might be very limited for some people, but I think the beautiful part of this is that we see the creation happens when we are the hand of nature. You know what I mean? It's the same feeling as the artists, the composers, and on and on. Okay. So, implications of believing in destiny. I tried to explain this already in the beginning. So I think that, and as I said, the Stoics were very much into this, and we could understand why. I mean, at those times, if a human being were much, they want lions, you see, so they really needed to develop a philosophy that was more positive, so that they could go over those moments. Of believing in destiny. First, I think that when we put ourselves into the hands of nature, I kind of feel that nature is much more creative than at least I am. And so I can have 10 ideas or 10 solutions for a problem, but I'm completely sure that nature has a million, you see. So if I so about the cost of opportunity, which is what in economics we say when we make a decision, then we already decided for that we're losing something else, and it's okay. Also, when we're the hand of nature, I think we're more connected, and it's easier to understand other people too, and to be less judgmental. So I think it's more, again, more open, but also less judgment. You see, more connection instead of less commitment. Because one of the things sometimes people say about destiny is that, okay, if I have a destiny now, I'm going to sit in my sofa, I'm not going to do anything else. But I don't see it like that. I think for me, it's the opposite of that. So it's like, if I have the destiny to that I'm going through in life, nature already gave me the tools. It put it inside of me, so that with these tools I really, no, I'm not going to be in the sofa. I want to do this and I want to do that. But these willing and wishes was nature putting it to me so that I could go and fulfill the destiny nature wants me to fulfill, if there is such thing as a nature. And I think it's more ecocentric and less egocentric, right? It's more we instead of me. It's more the inspiration through the nature. It's more the whole, and not just what I did. I did this, I wrote this book, you see? It's very different. So it's more humble in a way. And more acceptance. So, okay, I'm living this moment, it's being harder, but maybe that's something bigger thinking about this. So I'm going to try to see the positives and how can I handle this. You see, it's, I think, easier in a way than if we just let us go down and just feel we don't have any hope, you see. So I think, so more acceptance and simplicity and less judgment and criticism. And just finally, how to connect with our destiny, right? So we're talking about all of this thing of nature, but how can we get there? So through food, right? I mean, the way we eat, it's like one of the ways we connect with nature is through food, what we eat. So I would say the more natural we eat, the more nature we would become. And then being in nature, I wasn't that much. I love nature, but I grew up in a city, always in city. And but I can say the big inspirations I had in life, and even beautiful feelings I had in my body were when I was in nature. Really, really incredible. But this is for me. Every person has their own experiences, but also meditation activities that bring us again to the body, because our body is what nature gave us in the end, right? And so meditation is really good, and what I recommend you is to practice meditation when you are serene, not when you are in moments of stress. I mean, saying to someone go and meditate when they are in stress, it won't work. So we meditate when we are in those nice calm moments, so that when we become in stress, our body already has the wisdom of the meditation. And then writing, trying to write in a descriptive way, you know, and also disconstruct our feelings. Sometimes when we are feeling we're having a problem, sometimes it's good to sit down and look around again, see the big picture, right? We cannot say the forest is only a tree. So it's the same. Try to look at the forest, not just the tree. And dancing, singing, painting, this is also very natural things we can do with ourselves and other people. But also, and this is Simon's idea, delegating decisions and maybe divinations. So Simon likes to do this thing where he says, okay, so today you're going to decide everything. And the other day it's me, it's him who's going to decide everything. Because this way we go away from our conditionings, because we tend to always decide the same way. It's our comfort zone, and it's okay, we need that. So sometimes it's good to have someone to take us out a little bit, so that we can experience other things. And finally, because nature, it's all of us and everything. I know that nowadays sometimes people are very into how can I develop myself, but I think like breathing is going out and in. So it's very important, yes, develop ourselves, but also going out. And for that is to practice kindness and generosity with all the other people around us and people we don't know. Because again, the tree is important, but the forest, it's sometimes even more important, okay? And I will just finish with a quote from Oshawa. So what he said, I like this one a lot. He said, "Here is the narrow door. It is quite small and narrow and unpretentious, like those twin words, yin and yang. But once you have passed beyond these small doors, you are in infinite freedom, eternal happiness, and absolute justice." So, I mean, this is how I read it. Everyone will read it in a different way. But for me, of course, yin and yang can help us a lot going through our daily life, but there's something even bigger, right? It's what is above us, and for me it's nature. It can be God, it can be whatever, and it might not be anything, because this is just an approach I wanted to share with you. And this is it. I don't know if you have any questions or any comments too. It doesn't have to be a question.
So I love it. It's just great.
Thank you.
what I've been thinking the whole time is I'm preparing for the Macrobiotic Summer Conference, a talk on, well, at the time I don't even know what to say. I'm preparing because as I've been studying, I've been recognizing the difference between emotion and feeling. And I don't remember at the time when I gave a title, I don't remember which one I chose because I didn't recognize the difference. So it's similar to what you're presenting, the difference between the whole beginning of your talk, the different levels of consciousness and subconscious, unconscious. It's so interesting to think about these things.
I can give you an example. It's a very personal example. It's okay. So I had this kind of weird situation in my life where I was confronted with a situation I wasn't expecting. And my body all got really very tense, really tense. I was feeling like I don't even really know how to explain in words. But it was so funny. I was already meditating for years. So something told me, you go home, you're going to lay down. And I did that. I went home, I lay down, and I just started, because for me, meditation is just listen to the body. And it was so amazing because what my body told me, and it wasn't my mind, it was what I was feeling was relief. So it was a big change, it was like the first impact was, what is this, the emotions, but inside, really deep, there was a big relief, and then all of that passed. But I think it's this difference between the knowledge, what we think we know, and what our body knows, right? Because if we think about it, for me, the body is our ancestors' wisdom, right? In our body, we might have the knowledge of all of our ancestors. So if we just stop to listen the body, right, without any words, just listen the body, it might start talking to us through emotions. I think it's through emotions more than through words. I don't know. Do you think this helps, Ginat?
Yeah. Huh. What I was finding out is that emotion is the physical stimulus. Something happens, the bear runs after us, and then feeling is how I understand the emotion. And it's not enough just to have emotion. We need to feel. And to even put words to the feeling. I feel this, I feel that. And that way I could choose. Well, I'm feeling this, and I want to feel that. It's so that has personal input. Emotion is just response.
Exactly. Yeah. It makes lots of sense. Yeah.
Can you
give some practical examples?
For instance, do you know, if I may ask, what do you usually do, everyone, like when you want to connect with nature, or when you want to be more calm, or do you have any kind of practice you like to do? What do you think, Clara? Do you want to share? I like your hat.
No, I was following along the lines where Ginat was thinking about emotions and feelings, and everybody says it's the way I feel and I can't help it, and I'm wondering if you can help it, if you can, change your thoughts so that you could change your emotions or your feelings. And just like you said, if you want to calm down, then you go out and you go to nature or something, and then you feel calm, and then your emotions change, your feelings change. So is it something from the inside or the outside?
Mm-hmm.
How much control do you have?
I think also for me, at least my experience, I think I would put also practice in there. I think we need to practice. So I usually say to people want quick results, but when we were children, we had to try to talk for a long time so that we could start talking well. We had to try to walk for a long time so we start walking well, you know. And it's the same with emotions. But our parents, they do the best. They try their best. I'm sure of that. So they're really helpful on the help us walking well and help us talking well, and sometimes in the studies. But this emotional part, how to deal with it, it's not that mentioned, and it's also a practice, you know. For me it is a practice on. So I used to be very positive to other people but very negative with myself, and when I realized that, I started changing it. But it was really a practice, and it took years. And it's funny because I mean, I now I practically don't have thoughts against myself, you know. And in the past it was almost every day. But like, again, it's a practice, a learning, I would say.
Well, then it remains just for me to thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to sit and think with you and exchange with you and compare with you. It's you present it so well and so clearly. I really thank you for sharing with us.
I thank you. Okay. Thank you, Ginette.